The sun had not risen yet, but the weight on her chest was already heavier than the darkness around her. She sat by the edge of her daughter's bed, watching the little body tremble under the thin blanket. There was no name for what her child was going through. No physician could explain the sudden screams in the night, the twisted expressions of terror, the strength she displayed when overtaken by an unseen force. It was not illness, it was torment, and she, her mother, was helpless. The villagers had started whispering. Some said it was a curse, others that it was punishment. But she knew it was neither. It was a war, and her daughter was the battlefield. No one would help her. Not the priests of her land, not the wealthy neighbors who once admired her husband's fortune before it vanished in the storm of their tragedy. She had already sold her jewelry, every piece once adorned for luxury, now given away for prayers that yielded silence. What good were riches when your child was fading before your eyes? What good was money when no one had the power to save her? She would have given anything, even her own soul, if it meant her daughter could smile again. But all she had left was hope. And even that was wearing thin. She had heard of a man, not a doctor, not a sorcerer, but a Jew, a rabbi, a prophet, they said. Some called him the Son of God, others, a madman. But everyone agreed on one thing: when he spoke, demons fled. When he touched the broken, they rose whole. It was said he had calmed storms, multiplied bread, and even raised the dead. She didn't care what people called him. If he could save her daughter, she would crawl to him if she had to, even if he never looked her in the eye, even if he ignored her completely, even if he cursed her. Her love was louder than her dignity. She wrapped her daughter in a shawl and set off before dawn. The journey was long, dangerous, and uncertain. She didn't even know if he was still in the region, but love had already made the decision for her. Along the way, travelers mocked her desperation. They called her foolish for believing in a foreign miracle worker. They laughed at the way she begged for directions. But she didn't stop, not once. Because when God is the only option, you stop caring what people think. She was not searching for comfort. She was searching for fire. A fire that could burn the chains wrapped around her daughter's soul. Somewhere near the border, she saw a group of men walking with a calm figure in their midst. Her heart began to race. Was it him? She couldn't tell, but something in the air changed, like silence had suddenly become alive. She ran forward, clutching her daughter close, and shouted with everything inside her. The men looked alarmed. One of them tried to stop her. But she cried out louder, her voice cracked with dust and desperation. "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is severely possessed by a demon." And in that moment, everything stopped. Let me ask you something. What would you do if the only one who could help you acted like you didn't even exist? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. He didn't answer. Not a word, not a glance. As if she were invisible, as if her pain was beneath notice. The men around him tried to push her away. They said she was a nuisance, that she was making a scene. One of them even asked the man to send her away. But she stayed, on her knees, her arms wrapped around her daughter like a shield. Tears streamed down her face, not just from pain, but from the ache of being ignored by the only hope she had left. Still, she didn't move, because love never stops knocking, even when the door seems sealed shut. And then he finally spoke. But what he said was a sword to her soul. If you truly believe stories like this should reach more people, don't forget to subscribe. The truth changes lives. He looked at her with a gaze so calm, it unsettled the noise around them. And then he said it. "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. The crowd went still. Some of the disciples exchanged glances, unsure whether to feel justified or ashamed. The mother froze, not because she didn't understand, but because she did. He had just compared her to a dog, a stray, an outsider, a creature without claim, and he had done it publicly, without apology. Every wound she had carried for being a foreigner, too different, too distant, too unclean, had just been spoken aloud by the only man she believed could save her child. But instead of turning away in humiliation or outrage, something unexpected happened. She stood, not in defiance but in surrender. Her voice, low and steady, rose from a place deeper than pain. "Yes, Lord," she whispered, "but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Her words were not clever. They were not calculated. They were the purest form of worship, born from brokenness, not entitlement. She wasn't demanding a seat at the table. She was simply reaching for the crumbs. Because she knew that one crumb of God's power was greater than all the luxury the world could offer. There was no pride in her plea, no bitterness in her tone. Just love. Fierce, relentless, holy love. A mother's love that saw worth in the dust beneath divine feet. She had nothing left to prove, no status to defend. She was not seeking to belong. She was seeking a miracle. And in that moment, her humility shattered the walls between nations, between genders, between sacred and secular. Her faith stepped across borders that religion had drawn in stone. She believed not because she was taught to, but because her soul had seen something in him that flesh could not deny. Love, authority, compassion wrapped in mystery. The crowd didn't know how to react. Some stared in silence. Others looked away, uncomfortable with how raw the moment had become. The disciples, still learning to unlearn, stood unsure of their place. But he looked at her with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of eternity. There was no more testing, no more silence, no more delay. With a voice like the breaking of dawn, he said, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you desire." In that instant, the air shifted. The woman's knees gave way, not from exhaustion, but from release. She wept, not the tears of grief, but of healing, because she knew before she even turned around that her daughter was free. The miracle didn't need a touch. It didn't require a ritual. It only required faith and a crumb of God's mercy. If stories like this moved your heart, leave a like. That small action helps others find hope in places they thought were forgotten. The walk back home felt different. The road was the same. The dust still clung to her sandals, and the heat of the sun did not show her mercy. But something in her spirit had shifted. She no longer felt the crushing pressure of uncertainty pressing against her chest. It was as if the very air around her had been rewoven with peace. She didn't run. She didn't rush. She walked with the quiet confidence of a woman who had seen God, not with her eyes, but through his silence. There was no thunder, no lightning, just a word, and that was enough. When she reached the house, the neighbors watched from a distance. They remembered her leaving with her daughter wrapped in cloth, limp and screaming. Now she walked alone, head lifted, not with pride, but with reverence. She opened the door slowly, not because she doubted the miracle, but because she wanted to witness it unfold like sunrise. And there she was, her daughter, sitting upright, calm, smiling, as if nothing had ever touched her, as if darkness had never claimed her mind, as if heaven itself had planted her back into the soil of the living. The child looked up and called for her mother, not in a scream, not in agony, but with a voice steady and soft like oil on water. The woman fell to her knees again, but this time not in desperation. She wept with the kind of gratitude that doesn't have words, the kind that shakes the soul. She embraced her daughter as if touching her for the first time. She kissed her face again and again, memorizing the warmth, the clarity in her eyes, the peace in her breath. And though no one else in the room could hear it, her heart whispered again and again, "Thank you, God, thank you for crumbs." Her neighbors couldn't understand it. Some assumed it was luck, others a coincidence. But she didn't argue. There was no need to convince anyone. The miracle had not come to make her popular. It had come to make her whole. She returned to the marketplace the next day, not to tell a tale, but to live as a witness. And without trying to prove anything, people started noticing. The woman who had once been dismissed as hysterical, too loud, too strange, too foreign, now walked with a presence that made others pause. She had encountered love, not the kind that flatters, the kind that wounds before it heals, that humbles before it lifts, that tests the heart before filling it. She never forgot the silence. She never forgot the insult. But more than anything, she never forgot the moment heaven spoke into her suffering and said, "You matter. In a world that labeled her by race, gender, status, and failure, he had seen her faith, not her category. And in doing so, he taught everyone around him what true faith looks like. Not loud, not polished, not entitled, but desperate, honest, and unshakable. There are moments in life where you won't get a quick answer. When God seems far. When everything inside you screams for relief, and all you hear is silence or worse, a challenge. But this story reminds us that the path to divine breakthrough often passes through valleys of rejection, moments of crushing humility, and a choice to stay, even when it hurts. Because those who stay, those who kneel even when called dogs, often rise carrying more than they ever asked for. They never spoke again, at least not that we know of. The scriptures record no further dialogue between the woman and the one who healed her daughter. There was no ceremony, no dramatic farewell, just a miracle sealed in silence. But sometimes, the most sacred moments don't need applause. Sometimes, what happens in the private corners of faith is too holy to be broadcast in full. And that was enough for her. One word from his mouth had done what years of doctors, prayers, and tears had failed to accomplish. Her daughter was whole, and so was she. That encounter changed her, not just because her child was delivered, but because she had seen a glimpse of what heaven values: persistence over perfection, faith over familiarity, humility over heritage. She was not one of the chosen. She was not part of the nation. She had no seat at the table. But she believed that even crumbs from God's table carried enough power to break generational chains, and that belief, desperate, raw, unapologetic, had stopped heaven in its tracks. There are moments in your life when everything will tell you that you are unworthy, that your past disqualifies you, that your background is a curse, that your voice doesn't matter. But this woman's story was written into eternity for a reason, because in the eyes of the one who created the stars there are no forgotten cries, no wasted tears, no faith too small. What the world calls a dog, God may call a daughter. And sometimes the most powerful prayers are whispered from the dust by those who dare to believe in the goodness of God, even when it's hidden behind a no. You may be standing at the edge of your own battle right now. You may feel rejected, invisible, or too broken to reach out again. But don't stop knocking. Don't stop kneeling. Don't stop hoping. The road may be long. The silence may hurt. The answers may not come how you expected. But never confuse divine delay with divine absence. The same Jesus who challenged her with silence and parable is the one who shattered hell's grip on her daughter. He hears you. Even when it feels like he doesn't, he is love, even when he tests you with silence. If this story touched you, subscribe now and share it with someone who needs to be reminded. No matter how far you are, how low you feel, or how unworthy others say you are, God sees you. He honors faith born in the fire. And sometimes what looks like rejection is just the doorway to a miracle. Watch the next story waiting for you on the screen. It may carry the answer your heart didn't know it needed.